everyone, I'm Christine Marmoy. I'm a PhD student at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. And a few weeks ago, together with two friends, also PhD students at Strathclyde, David Beaumark and Anya Kaufman, we agreed to create a neurodivergent community to serve neurodivergent students in higher education here at Strathclyde, but also beyond our borders. So we decided to celebrate neurodiversity in collaboration with the University of Glasgow. For the occasion, we have recorded a series of conversations with other neurodivergent people. And today, Suzanne Harrington will share how she became aware of her neurodivergence. Suzanne is a PhD student in the Department of Management Science at Strathclyde Business School. Her research focuses on threshold concepts and more specifically, self-acceptance in autistic adults. Above all, Suzanne is keen for greater recognition of the reality of neurodivergence, especially the positives, and acceptance of the fact that neurodivergent or not, we are all different and that is totally fine. Welcome, Suzanne.
Yeah, I think I'll start with kind of maybe talking about my research a bit, because that gives me a bit of a foundation to move into other things. I'm researching threshold concepts and more specifically how they present in autistic adults. There's kind of a couple of layers to this. The threshold concepts is probably my primary research interest, I would say. I'm very interested in how people learn. And this is like the whole notion of threshold concepts is very tied in with experiential learning. And kind of looking back on it more recently, I think the reason why that appealed to me was because I knew that I learned differently. Even if I didn't officially know it, I think there was something that resonated in the whole notion of there being a personal aspect to it, as well as just kind of following the progression of a class or a subject or whatever it might be. The autism aspect of it then came in because my eldest son is autistic. He's 15 now, and he was diagnosed when he was 7, almost 8. Before I started my PhD, the interest kind of came from, well, he's autistic. I'm looking at how people learn. And it's not kind of explicitly said anywhere because, well, it tends not to be. But there's like there's a very clear implication in a lot of research generally that it's kind of focusing on a neurotypical population, unless it is research that is specifically about autism or ADHD or another kind of neurodivergence. So it's almost as if you either don't exist or you exist as a research subject. And if I'm being completely honest, because I didn't know about myself at that point, I was in a way doing that, kind of going, oh, well, this would be interesting to know about Jack. I would like to think I was being still more sensitive about it than a lot of things that I have read. But there was still that aspect of I was an outsider projecting my ideas of what learning for him was like. So I started looking at that. And the first thing I had to do when I did that was I had already done a research internship. I don't know if you know, Strathclyde do the research interns at Strath that you can do in between your 3rd and 4th year undergrad. And I had done that about threshold concepts. And then my undergraduate dissertation had been also about threshold concepts, but like in a slightly different kind of direction. So I had a fair kind of foundation on that side of it, but I didn't really know very much about autism apart from being Jack's mum. So I started looking into that, and I had one friend in particular who had been diagnosed autistic kind of later in life, in her late 30s, early 40s, around about then. So I was vaguely aware that this was a thing that happened, but didn't know anything about it. And then I started reading, and I was reading about autism, and I'm going, this all sounds very familiar, Susan. And you're going, yeah. And then I found things I think it was Laura James' Odd Girl Out that I read. I'm like, why is this person writing about me? You know, like, why? You know, I'd always kind of had this feeling that there was something I wasn't quite getting. Like, I did reasonably well in school. I had friends. I did sports. I was quite shy, and looking back, I was always quite kind of anxious. But it was just, you're a quiet, anxious child. It wasn't really anything that anybody explored beyond that. So yeah, I was reading this book and I was going, I'm identifying with so much of this. Like there was things in it about like um being quite good academically, in that you were learning very well and you could think about things very well, and you could maybe write an essay about it very well, but then exams were just a no-go. Like I could write an amazing essay and then go into an exam room, and the minute there's like this kind of pressure on, tell me the answer to this, my brain would just go, nope, nope, gone. We've never heard of this before in our lives. The answer's not coming out. And I kind of thought, right, well, I'd always kind of thought, oh, I'm just not focusing, I'm not studying properly, I'm not revising properly, whatever. I always thought it was kind of like an active thing that I wasn't doing. And then reading not only that book, but there's quite a lot of other stuff. My research involves kind of looking at the kind of network of autistic communities on Twitter as well. So I'd started kind of not deliberately kind of embedding myself in that network, but kind of the more I learned and the more I was kind of progressing my own learning about myself, I was becoming part of that community, and then that was giving me access to more things. And the more you're reading, the more you're identifying with, and you're going, yeah, this is kind of going in this direction. So yeah, I mean, even that in itself was quite useful, and I think there are probably a lot of people that don't even get to that stage of kind of going, there might be this reason why I am like this. And I don't mean that in a way like there might be this reason why I'm held back, or there might be this thing that's wrong with me. But I think for me anyway, having some kind of explanation of like, it's not just you approaching things wrong. It's not just you not applying yourself or not working hard or being a bit weird and not really getting on with other people that well in certain situations. Like there's an actual reason why this happens, and this was always going to be how it was for you, and that's totally fine. So partly, and I think looking back, this makes me laugh because I think it's quite quite a neurodivergent thing to do in itself, was that when I had started realizing that I was researching kind of autism and lived experience, and then started realizing that maybe I had more to do with this topic than I had thought, that then I was really like it would really add something to my research if I kind of explored this in myself a bit more. So like there's a little bit of kind of hyper focus kicking in, I think, where I got this idea. I was like, I have to go for it. But still, I was not really getting the whole, this is me. I was almost looking at myself from the outside as a research subject, going, I wonder what I can learn about myself and how this would help my research. Which maybe is quite common, but it does strike me as being at least a bit amusing looking back. Yeah, so long story short, I went to the GP a few times. I got the first GP that I saw kind of said, well, maybe you are autistic, but like you're 36, so what does it matter now anyway? And I kind of came away going, well, is he right? And I was like, well, no, he's not right, because it matters to me and that's what's important. So I went back and I got referred. I didn't get diagnosed. It didn't kind of have any impact on how much I was identifying with things and my own opinion of myself. It kind of just solidified the feeling that I'd got from my research of, well, it was specifically autistic people at that point, but like neurodivergent people as being some kind of subject to be looked at and not just a person. I mean, in my diagnostic appointment, there was comments where I had raised, well, like there is this participatory autism research, which is kind of which is kind of in conflict with what you are doing diagnosing people. So I was like, well, I don't really understand how there can be this research coming from autistic people telling you their experiences, but you can be so set in your ways that that your way of doing it, the diagnosis is right. And the response was like this really kind of dismissive, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's people just researching their own agendas, but I've been doing this for 40 years. And I think that kind of sums up, I mean, it's a tiny bit of my experience. It's not anything like my whole experience. There's a lot of positive things as well. But I think just that reaction kind of summed up a lot of the problems that we come up against as neurodivergent people. And it's kind of like, well, I have read this and I went to Oxford or I went to Cambridge or I've been a professor for 30 years. So what do you know about you? I know about you better, so you should listen to me. And we'll basically just know that that's not happening. And I think I could have probably got quite disheartened at that point and thought, well, maybe he's right and I'm not autistic. Maybe I am just weird. Maybe I'm doing everything wrong and it is my fault. And I mean, up until that point, well, anybody who knows about neurodivergence and the impacts of it not being spotted until you're an adult, like in my case, in my late 30s with 2 kids, and you know, there's mental health problems that come from that. And because not only are you not understanding yourself, nobody else is understanding you, and everybody, including yourself, is trying to push you into this box that you could never ever fit in, no matter how much you might want to and how much you might want to try. But I think, luckily, maybe I'm very, very stubborn. And possibly, I know another thing that people joke about, various neurodivergent people that I've spoken to, and it's that aspect of like, well, you've told me to do this, so now I'm not doing it. Like, not the kind of active choice of it, but just like, there is this thing that does that. Well, no, you have told me this, and that means that even if I wanted to believe that, I'm now not believing it. So that kind of made me go, well, actually, I'm going to show you just how wrong you are. And don't get me wrong, I was very, very upset. I left the place very upset, like in floods of tears. And one of the assistants had to take me outside and kind of like talk me through it before I could leave. But that's okay. It's fine. It's just a reaction to a situation. But then I did kind of go, well, actually, no, you're not right. And I don't really care that you've been doing this for 40 years. I don't really care what qualifications you've got. You do not know me. And while I'm not saying at all that I speak for anybody else in the same position, let alone that I speak for all autistic or neurodivergent people, I was like, there's also all these other people who, even if they don't realize it yet, are being impacted quite harmfully by this attitude that goes on. And I think kind of even moving away from like that kind of diagnostic thing, which is not massively, it is important that it's not important at the same time, because it's only like a small part of my life. I ended up then after that, I still identify with being autistic. Since then, just a few months ago, last October, I got diagnosed with combined ADHD, which does fit quite a lot and does and it does explain a lot of things to me. But then that was just something else where I came up against, this is what you're told ADHD means, and it wasn't at all what ADHD means or meant for me. So it kind of appears to me that like just being neurodivergent is, I don't know, there's a lot of talk about awareness, and there's a lot of talk about acceptance, but what happens beyond that? Like, it's not just about saying, oh, we're quite happy to recognize that people are neurodivergent. Like, what are you actually doing make it possible for these people. Like, we don't just want like, oh, well, okay, here you go, pat on the head, good neurodivergent person, come and do this. I mean, we've got strengths as well. There's things that it's not kind of just about, oh, well, my executive function is not great, I get distracted very easily, I can't do exams very well. I mean, what about what I can do? What about like the jokes that I can make very quickly because my ADHD brain is like going so quickly that I'm coming up with that response? And what about the fact that I can read a book incredibly quickly because I'm hyperlexic? Like, nobody ever touches on these things. And like, being neurodivergent is not kind of, it's just part of me. Like, I'm not any less important or any less worthy or any less valuable or any other way you want to put it because I'm left-handed or I have blue eyes. So I'm also not any lesser because I think in a different way to what is generally accepted to be the way people should think. And I mean, there's a whole different argument about whether that actually exists. Like, does this kind of average normal even exist? Does anybody kind of fit in it? It's like, I don't know if I'm even making a lot of sense, but I mean, it's not something that you can really avoid feeling quite passionate about once you know about it. And it almost becomes like, it's quite difficult for me to see why people have a problem with this. Like, I can't really see any problems with, I don't even just want to say inclusive, because I mean, there's all these words like inclusivity and acceptance and awareness to get thrown about, but they're all very like surface terms and very token gestures, and like, and it's all kind of well and good having these campaigns for awareness, but like, what is really changing? And it's not even just kind of about making life easier or making it more accommodating for people who are neurodivergent. I mean, the very term neurodiversity kind of is meant to convey that we're all individual people. Whether you have got something that fits somebody's checklist or not, you are not the same as the person next to you. And no matter how much of it, no matter how neurotypical you think you are, you don't fit in that box that you're trying to put everybody else in any more than they do. And the only real downside that I can see to kind of to being more appreciative, maybe, I don't know, the word doesn't matter, but the only downside kind of, or the only reason why I can see for people to keep making this distinction that if you did not fit in my box, you are wrong, is because that then challenges their own perception of I am right.
Exactly.
So if I am right, that person is not right. And if they are right, then I am not right. So it's almost like it's this massive societal ego problem that people will not admit that somebody who is different to them might actually have some advantages over them. And I'm not saying that being neurodivergent makes anybody better. I'm saying that, okay, maybe I am better than this and you are better than that. But because we have these differing things, my A can balance out your B. And because I can't do this very well, you can do that well. So we're denying everybody this opportunity to play to their strengths. We're so focused on deficits and not reaching this imaginary arbitrary bar that we have put up, that we're not remotely thinking about, well, how could you make this even better? And I spoke to somebody about this morning, and she made quite a good point that I thought was quite interesting, and it's possibly something I'm going to hyper focus on next. We'll see how that goes. But it was like, well, the kind of benefit to, like, if the whole purpose of kind of education is to get people ready for a job, essentially. And the whole purpose of business is really to make a profit. This is all a massive generalization, but let's just say, to simplify it. So you're bringing up all these kids to say, like, okay, you have to get all A's so you can go to university, so you can get a first, so that you can go and be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. But why? And why does that A on that exam paper mean you're better than the person who didn't get an A? What about everything else that there is to being a person? We're not just robots that have like one purpose. And I don't mean to take away from people who do really well in education or people who do value that. It's very, very one-dimensional. And it kind of all seems to boil down to, let's make people as efficient as we can so our capitalist society can make as much money as possible. But then when you start thinking about that, even if you are a capitalist and you want to be as efficient as possible, you're not getting the best out of all these people. So even if you want to reduce it down to money, you could be making more money by letting people play to their individual strengths, by letting people be creative. Like, in being so kind of dogmatic about these capitalist norms, you're actually hampering your own capitalist agenda. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And yeah, I mean, obviously I've got a personal interest in this and I'm not impartial about it, but you know, who is how can anybody be impartial about being a person? Because you are living your life being you. So be you. Where's the problem? Like, why is there not like, I don't know, like, the whole thing is very, very reductive.
Yes.
Of what people are. And I think that is my main problem. Even in terms of, even in where there is kind of more acceptance, it's all still, even if just implicitly focused on fixing what is wrong about you or helping you to improve your weak points. There's not an awful lot about, well, here's everybody's strengths. And you'll probably know yourself because you'll have read a lot of the stuff that I've read, but I think it's in Neurotypes, in Steve Silverman's book, that he's pointing out that like there's been lots of people in history, like there's all the kind of anecdotal things like, what was Einstein autistic, was Tesla autistic, and whether you want to say they were or they weren't, the fact remains that being slightly strange and slightly odd and being able to think of things that other people couldn't think of gave them their advantage and also has greatly benefited a lot of people who came after them. So yeah, like, where's the recognition of this? And while I think it's getting better, there's a long, long way to go. And there's still so many stereotypes that I don't know how many times people have kind of said to me, oh, well, you don't seem autistic, or like, you seem so normal. Look, you've done so well, you're doing a PhD and you've got 2 kids. And I'm going, well, maybe I'm doing that because I'm neurodivergent. Maybe I've had the ideas for this research because I'm different. It's like, maybe, like, it's not that I have managed this despite being different. It's maybe because not fitting into your box is exactly what makes me me and exactly what is exceptional about me, which sounds a little bit big-headed, but I'm going to go with it. Like, maybe what you were saying is wrong is actually exactly what is right. And I mean, I'm not kind of saying that I've got all the answers or even that I've really got any suggestions on how we make this better, but I find it incredibly frustrating that, like, we're in 2021, we know so much. I mean, even if we're not talking about neurodivergence, we know so much. There's been so many things about different learning styles, and right, some of that they've said has been, like, some stuff that has now been debunked, but like, why was this not then carried on to like, well, maybe there was something in this, let's keep going. Why was it, oh, this model didn't work, let's just go away and come back to our little boxes? And I don't know, I can't be very eloquent about this. I think the more I try to be eloquent, the more I kind of wind myself up and just get into my headset of, I don't understand this, I hate it. But it does come down to, I don't understand this, I hate it, why can we not do it better? Why does it need to be efficient, and why do we need to be able to prove it? We're not robots. You know, and why is efficient the best thing? Why is varied not the best thing? Why is effective not the best thing? Why is it we need to be able to categorize this and it has to be the fastest and cheapest way? Why do we all buy into that being what is best? Because it's absolutely not, unless you're the person at the top that's getting all the money from it. And there's even fewer of those people than there are of those of us who are being an absolute pain in the neck by not fitting into their boxes, but yet they get to be in charge. And probably quite a few of them have got there by thinking differently to the norm. So it all just circles all the time. And I know there's a school of thought that like Temple Grandin is problematic. And there might be problematic elements to certain things, but she is still a person who has lived this life as an autistic person and is making valid points. And that is a valid point. And I think that whether or not you are somebody who disagrees with other aspects about her life, you can't be advocating for people to be listened to while also saying, I'm not listening to Temple Grandin because of things that happened in her life that may or may not have been in her control. Sorry, this is not hugely relevant, but I think it's almost an example of how sometimes, even when we're trying to do the good and help, we've still got that internalized ableism that we're still kind of going, well, no, this doesn't fit with my experience, so it's invalid. And I think this is another thing that is quite important with like neurodiversity, not just research, but I think even on a peer support level or on any kind of level, is that if you are subscribing to the we are different and that is good, that doesn't just mean that your brand of different is good. And it also doesn't mean that everything about nobody is all good or all bad. Yeah. There's ups and downs to everything, and we're all just people. We've all got our good points and our bad points, but I think it's quite important not to entirely write somebody off because of something you don't like. Even if you don't like 90% of it, that 10% might still be very valuable. So this is part of the issue as well, I think, and it's kind of like Damien Milton covers it quite well in his double empathy stuff. It's like, yeah, he seems weird to you, but you also seem weird to him. And you know, you don't have to like everybody. It's totally fine to not want to be friends with everybody that you meet. But like, it's this kind of default reaction of like, oh, he's doing something different to me, he is wrong, and that is bad. Yeah, you were kind of on the same side of the double empathy problem as such, maybe. Exactly. Yeah. I think this is where it gets really frustrating, because it's like I can see all the problems and all the things that I don't like, but I don't know how we fix it. And I mean, it's not an overnight thing, is it? It's not that somebody can just go, oh, look, we're all really accepting about this. It's going to be a process. But I think, and I know when I've spoken to you before that you've kind of said the same thing, that I think not the start of it, because there's been a lot of people who have already started this off. And without those people, maybe people like us wouldn't know what we know about ourselves. But I think for me anyway, I feel that even kind of talking about my own experience, and I think it's things like this is what we need to do to normalize it, kind of. And I really don't like that word, but you know, it's probably the best one that I can think of just now. And yeah, like, and it is rubbish in a way, in that we're the people who have lived our lives suffering because of this. And again, like, suffering is a strong word. I've been pretty happy for most of my life. You know, it's like, I'm not for a second saying I've been miserable, but I've absolutely had unnecessary difficulties that I've had to face because of both other people's expectations that they put on me, whether implicitly or not, and my own expectations that I was trying to put on myself, because I was definitely unconsciously going, oh, look, this is just what you should do. And I'm not for a second saying that everybody who is neurodivergent has this moral obligation to speak out about it, because you don't, because it's not everybody's responsibility. But I think the only way that we're going to get it fixed is by people like you and like me and other people who are taking part in, well, this particular project and similar project. It's kind of, the more we talk about it, the less of an other it becomes, because maybe the people who are going, oh, like, I don't think you're autistic, or oh, you can't have ADHD, like, you're not sitting there lining up cars and rocking in the corner, so like, no, you're too normal. And you know, they're kind of proving my point in saying that. And you're like, yeah, I am pretty normal, but that's because being different is normal. We're all different. You know, normal doesn't mean identical. It's like, I'm not trying to kind of say that I'm doing this perfectly or that I am somebody who's going to save everybody. But I mean, the only example that I have got is my own life and my own experience. And hopefully, the more open that I am and that you are and that other people are about that, and the more we all talk about it, maybe over time, I would like to think it could become more accepted and less of an issue. Because I think when you're doing research and it's so drummed into you that like everything has to be like, there has to be like generalizability, and everything has to be, you be able to replicate it and be able to prove it. And you're almost trying to scientifically prove that you shouldn't scientifically prove things, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of different levels that you have to kind of take this on. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think basically talking is our most powerful tool, I think. And if you want to talk, you talk. If you want to listen, you listen. If you want to jump in and out, and if you never ever say a word, if you never ever let on that you are identifying with this to anybody except yourself, I mean, if that makes you feel even a bit more happy in yourself, then people like us have done our job. Exactly. It's not about us all being activists, because I'm not an activist. You know, I would like things to be better, but I know that like my goal in life is not kind of to go about shouting at people at how they're wrong and how they can change things. What I want to do is use my voice that I've got to help other people feel better about themselves. And then hopefully the societal change will come as a result of that. And there are other people who are activists and they're great at it, so they can do their job and I will do it in my way. And we've all got the same goal, but again, we're all playing to our strengths and doing what we can. And like, I don't know, like, there was a stage at my research, and I don't know if you had it, where like I did feel like, oh, I need to be an activist, I need to do this. And it wasn't that anybody was saying, if you are an autistic researcher, you have to be an activist. It was that I felt like, this is terrible, I have to fix this, I have to do this. And then, sorry, excuse me. But then you realize, you know what, well, no, because that's not my strength. My strength is being here quite quietly most of the time, doing my work. And then something like this comes up and I'll come on Zoom and I'll talk behind leg off everybody, and maybe people will identify with that. But again, it comes back to we've all got things that are valuable and things that we're good at, and yeah, I mean, I feel like for all I've kind of spent the last 40 minutes or whatever ranting about all the problems with things, I mean, finding out that I am neurodivergent has been the best thing that has ever happened to me. It really, really has. And I mean, I've been through some really traumatic things in my life. And I mean, there's some that I don't particularly want to talk about, particularly because it's been recorded. But, you know, maybe at some point when we're allowed to go to pubs, I will tell you in a pub. Do you like that kind of thing? But, you know, I got bullied in school for being a bit weird. I always felt like it's one of those things that you can't express. You just knew that you weren't quite doing things right. And I got married and I had my kids and they're amazing. And then I got divorced, and I mean, that was an issue as well. Not an issue that anybody was telling me was an issue, but was an issue for me because I'm from an Irish Catholic background, and getting divorced, I was like, oh, you don't do this, you know, this is not what we do. But I had to, not because like my ex-husband is not a bad person. Nothing terrible was happening, but I couldn't be me in that environment. And finding out that I am neurodivergent, and I mean, I'm officially ADHD. I self-identify as autistic as well, because I kind of believe more in a general neurodiversity rather than, like, I think almost in a way, while it is helpful getting a diagnosis, in some ways you're not getting rid of the box, you're changing the boxes and still limiting, but that's a different story. So yeah, so when I learned this about myself, it's like, not only did things that had happened in the past and the way that I did things made more sense retrospectively, but I also understand me. And I think that's a very good place to be in, because, you know, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but like, how can you really be happy or love anything or anybody else if you've not made peace with yourself? And, you know, yeah, there's a lot to be said just about being happy and being comfortable with yourself. And yeah, I've got days where, and I know like some people will not, well, this will be an unpopular opinion to some people, but I have days where I'm like, oh my God, this would be so much easier if I just didn't have ADHD, or if I wasn't autistic, or wasn't neurodivergent. And you've got your moments where you go, God, I wish I could just be normal. But I mean, that's just part of life, isn't it?
We all have something.
We all have something. And even if I wasn't at that moment going, oh, ADHD makes this so difficult, I would still find that thing difficult. But my baseline was a lot lower. I'm finding it difficult from like up here, being happy with myself and knowing who I am, which is an entirely different scenario from finding something difficult when you're down here and you're going, I'm a terrible person and I can't get this right, and it's so easy and everybody else is doing it. I wouldn't change it. I really wouldn't change it. I mean, I just kind of don't want to give that kind of, yeah, everything's amazing and life is brilliant.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's for sure. No, it's not.
But, I mean,
yeah.
It's not that I have these negative moments because I am neurodivergent. It's because I am a person and life is not perfect. And, you know, it's normal frustration. So, you know, but regardless of how bad things have got, and I mean, the last year has been pretty terrible for most people. I mean,
yeah.
Pandemics and lockdowns, and I had a relationship breakdown during lockdown, but like, I can tell you, all of this is infinitely easier to deal with when you're starting from a good point of, I am me. And, you know, whatever, like, maybe I'm not supposed to say it, but, you know, I'm a pretty awesome person, and I've got plenty going for me and plenty that's good about me, and bad things are going to happen. And maybe my neurodivergence does highlight some things and does add to problems, but, you know, we've got problems. We've all got problems. And the main thing about this is that, like I mentioned to you kind of at the start, that I've had like the kind of mental health problems that go along with it, but like they're gone. I've spent like my whole adult life being medicated for depression and anxiety and kind of being really self-sabotaging with things like binge eating and overspending that again are quite common for people, especially with ADHD, because it's like the dopamine seeking thing. You want the next hit, you want the next hit. And then in October, like I'm 38 now, 38 in October as well, and I started taking the medication for ADHD, and that's gone. It's gone. I'm not sabotaging myself. I'm not doing really stupid things just because I need a little bit of excitement because, my brain is like, no, we need to make a bit of drama here because it's all a bit quiet now,
Oh, so true. Oh, this is so true. Yes.
Sorry, everything's too easy. Let's just see what we can do to shake it up a bit, And yeah, I do that because I'm still me. But maybe I was never depressed. If I was, it was just because I was trying to be somebody that I'm not. So the benefits of knowing who I am, greatly outweigh the impact that it has on my life. It works for me. And I think, again, just because other people are going to be watching this, I mean, that's not me saying everybody with ADHD should be medicated because it's amazing. It's me saying that this ADHD medication has had an amazing impact on my life.
Yeah.
And all you should do and all you need to do is what works for you. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. And I think some of it for me anyway is about being okay to go with the negatives as well. Like, if I have a day where I'm totally overwhelmed, I can go, you know what? It's okay if you don't do the housework today. You can sit on the couch and watch Netflix and you can do it tomorrow, and that's not a problem. Whereas before I'd have been like, stop being so lazy, just get up and do it. You need to do it. Everybody does it. And that's not helpful at all. So
Yeah, no.
you still don't get it done, but you're also totally miserable about it as well. So
Somebody else.
it's a movement from having a whole life full of things you can't relate to finally having something that you can relate to. And it's not identical, but it's like there's enough there that makes you realize that you're not alone, and that is a big thing.
So thank you very much, Suzanne, for participating to this series. It was a beautiful experience that you shared with us. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Christine. Bye.